Welcome to Labor Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Abrantes, Assistant Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, the Carpenters Union.
And I'm Cyndie Williams, Executive Director of the CCT. Together as your co-hosts, we'll explore the world of organized labor, bringing you behind-the-scenes stories and insights from inspiring union leaders, dedicated partners, and community change makers. In each episode, we dive into authentic conversation to uncover what unions are really about beyond the headlines and the myths.
Whether you're new to the movement or a union ally, our conversation showcasing diverse voices and real-life stories will explore union hurdles, triumphs, labor's rich history, its role in workforce development, all while shedding light on how unions create lasting change and foster economic growth and creating generational wealth.
Join us as we build a broader coalition, elevate future generations, and showcase how unions contribute to creating a positive cultural legacy.
Tune in, get informed, and find out how organized labor is making a difference. So today we are honored to be joined by Governor Mikie Sherrill, the Governor of New Jersey. Governor Sherrill's career has been defined by service as a U.S. Naval Academy graduate, Navy helicopter pilot leading missions across Europe and the Middle East, as a federal prosecutor here in New Jersey, and as a member of Congress representing the 11th District. Throughout her career, Governor Sherrill has focused on national defense and public safety to legislative leadership focused on affordability, infrastructure, community well-being, and pragmatic solutions that improve everyday lives of families in New Jersey. Now, as governor, she's tasked with shaping New Jersey's next chapter. Governor Sherrill, welcome to Labor Lounge Podcast.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks so much, Anthony.
It's always a pleasure to see you. And outside of that introduction, I've obviously been a great friend to the Carpenters, a great friend of labor throughout your political and public service career.
Hi, Cyndie. How are you?
I was going to say, as a selfish get for myself, it's just so happy to see, a woman leading the state of New Jersey as my young daughter heads into her high school career soon. And just seeing a champion for leadership for women is just absolutely powerful. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. And it's great to see you. I always love women in labor because I love women in non-traditional jobs. So it's always exciting to work with all of you guys.
All right. So we'll just get right into it. What are your administration's top priorities as far as workforce development in the state of New Jersey? And how do you plan to align education, training programs, and employer needs to close the skill gaps that are coming?
That is such a great question because, as you know, I ran on affordability, this idea that the state was simply making it too hard for middle-class families to really survive, to, make their home payments, to keep their jobs. And part of that crisis was making sure that people were able to get a good job, and that job was going to pay for kind of the basic necessities. And then we just recently saw a report that New Jersey had some pretty bad unemployment numbers. And certainly we see a lot of what we're developing here being constantly under attack from the president. So just this past week, I've been fighting tooth and nail to keep the money flowing for the Gateway Tunnel project, which could be almost 100,000 good labor jobs throughout the region. So we're really, we want to keep those shovels in the ground. Right now, we're already employing about 1,000 people who just the other day had to go home and tell their families, I'm not sure what the future of work is here. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get medical care. So making sure that I keep driving jobs is front and center to my administration. And as you said, Cyndie, you've got to align labor, higher ed, business, all working together on this idea because so much of what labor does now is so high end. And if you guys are going to be ready for the jobs of the future, it's going to take community colleges throughout the state or four-year colleges to kind of have those stackable degrees that we're all talking about. Gone are the days where you sort of get on a job and 20 years later, retire without any changes. So you're going to probably find yourselves at any level going to the local community college to get retrained on some of the high-end machinery or running that. You're going to probably find if you want to take over a site. Maybe you go for some management training. And we've seen with labor too, and feeding some of those apprenticeship programs into degrees so that they're marketable, so people can continue to advance in the career. Something that labor does better than anyone is make a career for people, is chart out that, okay, you are going to come out of high school, you're going to have a good job, and we're going to help you grow throughout that job so that you have not just a job, but a career. And I'll tell you, it really occurred to me. I tell this story a lot. You guys have probably heard it, about how I think the reason that I'm sitting here in the governor's office today is because of the good union job my grandpa got. After the Great Depression, my family had lost everything. He got a union job. He was able to raise his 8 kids. And that really put my family squarely into the middle class, which gave me the opportunities I had to be here today. I just heard that story. I was just at an event to support the Gateway Tunnel, and I heard that story from this guy, Tracy Porter from Leuna, who was saying, I mean, it just could have been my family's story. His dad had a 3rd grade education. He started working, got a great union job. And because of that union job, he was able to support his family. And now his daughter, who he's supporting, is getting a college degree in psychiatry. I mean, it felt just kind of like, I know that story, right? That's my story. It's the story of so many people across the country. That's what labor does. And that's why I'm always so supportive. And that's why that intersection of labor, higher ed, and industry is going to create the innovation and jobs of the future.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people don't necessarily appreciate, because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of those stories out there. And I think people don't necessarily appreciate what organized labor has done, not just say for construction or service or hospitality, but for a number of industries. We've really mastered the art of education, continuing education, and also bringing people into the middle class. And I think for you coming into the office, taking advantage of some of the things that we've done, say, let's say the carpenters have done for over 140 years that have worked, using that in good government are also beneficial to everybody else.
As we evolve in labor, we're so much aligned to higher education too, that we're a part of those conversations of workforce development as labor leaders, right? And trying to figure out where education and labor can meet just to make a more productive workforce and meet the state's needs.
I think it's such an exciting time for labor for a couple of reasons. One is just what you said. Gone are the days where you graduate high school and you have kind of this either or, this choice, choose your own adventure path, right? Either you go into a career without a college degree, or you get a college degree and you go into that career. That is not the workforce. There are a million different careers you go into, and you're going to have to keep getting retrained in them. And, I mentioned my grandpa was a UAW guy. He was a welder. Gone are the days where he's working on the factory floor as a welder for 20 years, right? The type of machinery that somebody who does that job today would be utilizing is going to change and advance so much. And so that skill set, you have to grow. And again, it's exciting for labor because this is what labor's always been good at, is charting out, okay, if I take you the minute you graduate high school, and I want to see you through a career where you can support your family, and then I want you to have a good retirement. What is that going to look like? That's what you guys do. That's what you've always done. And so that's why you play such a good role. The second reason I think it's an exciting time for labor is labor plays such a key part in how we chart out what I think of as my affordability agenda. How do we make sure that families can afford their cost of living, that they have a good job, that they have a good pension, that they retire with dignity, that they can take care of their kids, that if they get sick, it's not a bankruptcy problem. I mean, just hearing that horrible story about the star of Dawson's Creek and having, putting his family into such medical debt, that's a story we hear too often. We felt like we had started to address that with the Affordable Care Act, but now the Affordable Care Act's getting taken apart piece by piece. So really thinking through the future and how people afford this, it's innovation in every area, and labor has a lot of the answers.
Yeah, I think people don't necessarily appreciate the fact that, yes, organized labor is about protecting workers, but fundamentally it's about providing somebody with a good career that's sustainable, having healthcare, having the ability to retire, having the ability to go home every day in a safe manner. There's so many things that are part of what we're trying to accomplish. It's not just making sure workers are protected, right? It's about affordability. It's about dignity. It's about respect. And it doesn't matter if you're in the blue collar industry or a white collar industry. And I think that's where we get a bad rap. And I think people need to embrace that concept a little more because there's so much that's involved. It's not just worker protections.
Sure, it's an entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's keeping New Jersey residents and their communities thriving by way of middle class lifestyles, right? And being able to be a part of the ecosystems of healthcare and good education, so that we can continue on in innovation. And as we consider the economic future of New Jersey, what targeted strategies is your administration looking to support as far as competitiveness, job growth? Aligned with job growth, what kind of sectors are we looking at here?
Well, one of the areas that's key to labor is looking at, when we look at job growth, is making sure we have the training programs, the union apprenticeship programs across the state, and making sure we're getting young people into those programs and that they have that access. So I think part of that is a real discussion with different counties about how we can grow union apprenticeship programs across the state. When I speak to sometimes people in Newark, and I say, why haven't you joined a union? Sometimes it was because the training was too hard to get to and they didn't have a car. And so having some of that training in Newark can be helpful to getting that pathway and getting younger people into our union apprenticeship programs and having those great job opportunities. It's also, we have a state where it's hard to do business. And the other area that I think people don't understand is labor and business have to have a relationship. Sometimes it's a tough relationship, but we need those jobs. We need people to innovate. We need them to grow businesses. We need them to employ people. And the better they run their business, the more likely they are to employ union labor, because that's going to be your best trained labor. So really looking at how we cut through red tape and permitting to make sure that people can start these jobs so they can grow our economy, so they can look at those employment options in the future. And I'd also mention, I couldn't agree more with everything you both said about labor, but I would also expand it a little bit. And I say this often when I'm at labor rallies or in front of members of labor. When you fight for better wages, when you fight for better working conditions, when you expand healthcare to people, those benefits don't just impact members of labor unions. They impact workers, period. So that's another area I think labor is sometimes, people don't understand sometimes what a benefit labor unions can be to the entire workforce and working people everywhere. It's not just if you're a member. If you might be somebody working in a cubicle at an accounting firm or something, but if we fix the healthcare system, and if we do it with some of the ideas that labor comes forward with, which is very likely, then that's going to impact you, and you may have no idea that labor is responsible. So those are the kind of things that I think are not always well understood in the community.
Yeah, I would say you said a couple of things that are extremely important to us. One is access or barriers to transportation in the trades or any industry. And I think one thing the carpenters have done well, and particularly you had mentioned Newark, one thing we see related to apprenticeship is people don't necessarily have access to public transportation or get to it from certain training centers. One thing we've invested in is making sure that we have partnership with Lyft or Uber to get people to and from work, to and from training. So we've cutting down on all the barriers to access in terms of the apprenticeship programs. And more folks need to do that, because all people want at the end of the day is an opportunity. The second thing you mentioned was the partnership between business and labor. And as private sector unions, we understand this because the business community cannot thrive without a skilled workforce, and labor unions in the private sector cannot thrive without good partners on the business side. And we understand that productivity, craftsmanship, skill set equals profits. And the more successful our business partners are, the more successful we are as organized labor. And the last thing I would say is the residual benefits of what labor is trying to accomplish. When we provide healthcare to our members, they're able to access healthcare in a number of facilities that are profit driven. When we're having pension funds and we're investing our pension funds in workforce housing or affordable housing, where you're taking working class people money and reinvesting it into society. Those are the things that people don't necessarily understand. If people didn't have retirement accounts or pension funds, they wouldn't be investing in communities.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think when we see AI coming, when we see so many different changes to how people are going to be employed, really charting out how the workforce is still going to um, have a paycheck, have a good job, work with dignity, retire with dignity. These kinds of disruptions are where labor really has to get engaged and chart that future. And I know you guys are thinking about it through different conversations to unions across the state. That is the kind of engagement that I think is really powerful. And these are the kind of changing times where I think labor gets a lot of power.
Yeah, I've been on, and Anthony and I alike have been on a lot of conversations with just workforce development boards, just state level boards that are talking about, the jobs in New Jersey and where we're going. And, we know solidly that the apprenticeship model that we belong to is a tried and true method, right? And you think about the New Jersey jobs that are coming forth and that are in demand right now: manufacturing, healthcare, technology. What are some of the things that you see as a potential rooted solution to some of these jobs, and how they harness sort of the energy around these job creations?
Yeah, you talked a little bit earlier about, where we're headed in New Jersey: healthcare, defense-based manufacturing, infrastructure programs. Um, and when you look at some of these areas, when we see where what AI might impact, some of the jobs that feel very rooted in labor that aren't going to be able to be performed by AI, feel as if much of that comes from trade unions or some of the service unions, those jobs where you really need a person engaged in doing it. So whether it's the carpenters or Leona building things, some of the huge infrastructure projects we have, some of what 32BJ does, and taking care of office buildings and stadiums. And then some of what we see is just, the jobs that we need as far as plumbing, et cetera. These all feel very much like they will not be the first tranche of jobs harmed by AI. And so these are going to be the areas of great growth, I think, where we can really do apprenticeship programs, make sure people have those good jobs. And then some of the disruptions will come in some of the other areas, and we'll be charting out around there how we keep people's jobs stable. There's two trains of thought. There is the train of thought that AI is going to really just result in mass unemployment and really a breakdown of society. And there's the train of thought that it's going to actually there'll be different types of employment, but we're actually going to be doing different things because AI is going to enable whole different fields of study. So one of the things that I think will be important as we also work with higher ed is having the workforce trained in AI. And that's going to be coming for labor too. As you're using the different machinery, what parts of the machinery are going to be run by AI that you're going to have to understand? So instead of maybe a person putting all of the inputs in, saying, this is how I want it to work and I want it to do it this way. And the reason it's so important that we do that training in AI is because, some of the experts in this space will tell you either we do that and we as human beings run AI because we understand it so well, and so we utilize it to make our lives better. Or we have AI that sort of runs rampant, we don't control it, and it destroys society. I mean, that's the kind of apocalyptic view of some. But I would say here in New Jersey, we have great schools, we have great workers, we have great apprenticeship programs. So this is an area I think we can manage very well. And doing some of this AI training is we're on the forefront of how we're going to utilize it to help workers and to, do the job better.
Well, I know we're running short on time, and one thing I definitely want to ask you is, how do you see your administration measuring progress related to workforce development over the next 4 years, over the next 8 years, and what kind of benchmarks or performance marks are you guys setting to identify what success looks like?
So we just hired, or we just nominated Kevin Jarvis for the new labor commissioner. This is somebody that I know is well known to labor, someone who's worked in the field a very long time. And he is going to be very engaged in charting out exactly how we run the metrics. Some of the things that I'm really committed to doing is in better enforcement for our labor standards. We often say we have the best labor standards in the country, but they're not always enforced the way we want them to be enforced. Tracking those jobs numbers, like I said, I'm not happy with unemployment numbers here in Jersey. So really tracking how we can grow some of these jobs, where the opportunities are. He'll be working closely with Evan Weiss over at the EDA so that we can plan the economic benefits of growing out employment. And this is why, the connection between labor industry and higher ed is so important. And then making sure that through apprenticeship programs and through our higher ed programs, we have those pathways for people to get into these good jobs. And of course, having labor have a seat at the table. So part of what I'm sure Kevin will be doing is speaking to both of you about exactly what you're seeing, and we're measuring this, and this is how it seems to be working. What are you seeing? Are we measuring the right things? Because as you guys know from working with my office for many years, we're constantly on the ground measuring our success. Is this how, you've come to us saying this is your problem, this is how we're attacking it, how's it working? And I'd say 9 times out of 10, we've already worked very closely with you, so we've charted out a good plan, but it can always be tweaked. It can always do better. And that's why having labor have a seat at the table is so important.
Yeah, well, the good thing is you have a professional and respected group of cabinet members that you built around you. And I think it's really going to help drive New Jersey forward, particularly related to workforce development and partnerships and the industry as a whole, whether you're on the business side or the workforce development side. And we really look forward to working with you moving forward.
Well, back at you guys. It's great seeing you, even virtually, hopefully next time in person, and have a great rest of your day. I appreciate it.
Governor, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.